Hey guys, welcome back. And in this tutorial, I'm going to be doing a brief overview of layers, what layers are and why they're important. And I'm going to go over the layers dialog box and just kind of talk to you about that and cover all the buttons on it. Okay. Now, layers in Surfcam are extremely important. It allows you to keep uh, your Surfcam file organized and have different geometry on different layers. Okay, now all elements that you create are going to fall into a layer. New elements are if you have not created any layers, then everything that you draw is going to go in the default layer. Now, usually it's when you first open up a part and decide how you want to go about programming it. It's easiest to create the new layers first, and then that way you can just switch back and forth between the different layers uh, rather than trying to redraw all the elements on a new layer. It's easier just to go ahead and make your layers first, and then you can go in order of programming it. Now, sometimes you're going to have complex geometry or maybe a part that has uh, a whole bunch of operations and maybe you forgot to put them in layers. Well, I'm going to show you what you do in that situation too. Okay, so this is your layer button. This one right here is showing you which layer is current right now. So you can there's two ways to get to it. You can either click on it or you can hit Control L. Hold Control and press L. That's the hotkey for layers. Now, by default, uh, layer number one is always going to be the first one, and it's going to be called default layer. You can, however, go in the options and change that to, let's say, if you wanted it to always be called op1 by default. There's a way to go in the options menu and set that. I'll be going over in detail the options menu a little bit later. So for right now, what I'm going to do first is just kind of go over. I'm going to go over all these buttons and talk about them, and then I'm going to end this tutorial after that. Okay, and the following tutorial, I'm going to go into detail about how to use the buttons, and I'm going to show you an example of what each one does. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, the default layer is always going to be one. When you first turn on Surfcam, all the new elements are going to fall into layer one. You can only have one layer active at a time, and elements that you draw or geometry that you create is always going to fall into the active layer. Okay, and this one right here is showing you which layer is active. Now, this is the layers dialog box. And okay, so I'm just going to start with these buttons up here. All right, this is your visible button. This makes your layer visible on the screen or invisible, and that's what this V is visible and invisible. And then these two buttons make it where you can select elements on the layer or where you can't select elements on the layer. So you can have a layer that is visible that you can see on your screen, but if you have it unselected, then you can't change anything on it, or you can't create toolpaths on it. And sometimes that does come in handy. Sometimes you want more than one layer visible, but you want to be sure that you can't change anything on one particular layer. So all you do is make it visible and make it unselectable by clicking that. All you do to change these is just click it and it changes. Now, one thing that Surfcam doesn't like, if you try to make the layer that is current, that's what this C right here means, is the current layer. If you try to make your current layer invisible, it's going to give you this message. Now, whenever you make a current layer invisible, It's not recommended because anything you draw or do on that layer you won't be able to see. Like if I made this, if I clicked OK anyway, and see how it turned it invisible. Now if I draw a line on this layer, or if I draw a line, it will create it, but it won't create it on this layer, so I won't be able to see it. And that's all that means. It's asking you, are you sure you want to work on an invisible layer? Normally when you're going to be changing these to visible or invisible or selectable or unselectable, you're going to have more than one. But I don't have more than one right now because I'm just going to cover the buttons with you. Okay. Now, OK confirms any changes you make. That one's pretty self-explanatory. Cancel, if you accidentally made a change that you don't want, you can hit cancel and it will go away. Apply. Now, apply is a new button. What the apply button does is you select the apply button to update your layer settings, and it allows you to see the results of those changes without actually exiting the layers dialog box. Okay, now you can do this at any time, and the changes that are made to the visible layers will be updated on your screen. Okay, see, when you click it, it doesn't go away. It'll change, it'll update what you see on your screen. It just won't exit the dialog box. And that's a new button that they just added in Surfcam 2014. Okay, now current, current makes, if you highlight a layer and click current, that makes it current. Okay, that's pretty much all that does. Now I'm gonna add a new layer in here. We'll just call it temp. So when you click on new, this is how you add layers. When you click on new, you're able to give it a name. You give it a reference number, which can be anything from 0 to 255. So you can have actually up to 206 or 256 total layers. And then it asks you, do you want to make it current or not? So if we click that check mark, click OK, then it puts my new layer, makes it current. Okay, so if I want to go back and make that the only one that I see on my screen, all I do is go up here and click that V, and that turns that invisible. Okay, now let's before I go any further on this list, let's go over what these buttons do right here. Now, the pound sign is called the column heading. Okay, and what this will do is if you click it, it puts all your layers in numerical order, which they already are right now. You click it again, it's just going to reverse it. Okay, the same thing goes for this. This button lists the current layer first. Click it again, and it reverses it. Okay, layer name sorts the layers in alphabetical order, and you just toggle back and forth, and it reverses it. Okay, this one, it puts the visible layers first and reverses it, and then the same thing with this one if you have any that are unselectable. Okay, so we just went over how to make a new layer. Delete, you can, if you highlight a layer, click on delete, and it will delete it. Now, if you're trying to delete a layer that is current, it's going to bring this message up and ask you, deleting layers deletes all the geometry on the selected layer. Are you sure you want to delete? And you can either say yes or no. Okay, move geometry. What this allows you to do is move geometry back and forth from one layer to another without having to. If you meant to create a whole separate layer but you forgot to, you can go back later and create a new layer and move the geometry you want to that layer. What this does is this allows you to copy the geometry instead of moving it from one to another. This will let you copy it from one to another so that you still have it in your original layer. Okay, swap visible. All this does is it toggles the visibility of all the layers. If you have more than two, let's say I'll make another one. We'll just call it temp 2, make it current, and temp 3. Okay, so as you can see, let's make them, all these are visible. What this does is it makes them all invisible or visible. That's all that does, okay? And the swap selectable does the same thing. Okay, rename, that's pretty self-explanatory. That just lets you rename it. And then you got your help menu, which that doesn't help all that much. That's what we're here for. So I'm not even going to go over that button. But that is a brief overview of your layers dialog box and what all the buttons are and what they can do. Now in the upcoming very next tutorial, I'm going to be going over in detail how to create new layers, how to move geometry around, and so on and so forth. I just kind of wanted to get you familiar with this box so that in the next tutorial you've seen it before and you kind of know what to expect. Alright, one thing you might want to note here, I forgot to mention, when you're renaming a layer, there is a limit to how many characters you can use. Okay, you can only have up to 29 characters. Alright, so tune in to the next tutorial and we will go over how to use these features. Okay, talk to you soon.